Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to be looking at the weekly metagame breakdown, the best decks in Explore Best of 3 on MTG Arena. Explore kind of Pioneer at home. Most of the set, the Pioneer format, not all of it. We're missing some cards, but Pioneer, N-E-A-R, as the kids like to say. We're going to look at the best decks post the ban announcements. So we have Amalia banned and Sorin banned, and the format's kind of opened up a bit. So we're going to take a look, see where things are at. We got 12 deck lists today to feature, and then we'll kind of dive into each of those. Right now, the metagame distribution isn't huge in terms of popularity of the day. From Platinum Mythic, the ladder just kind of reset a couple days ago. So it's heavily Phoenix, Azorius Control, and then like food decks, Golgari Food, Jun Food, which we'll take a look in a sec. But there's quite a big diversity in terms of play types that have shown up in the individual stats. The population sizes are fairly small right now. Explore Best of 3 isn't the largest played format, so focus less necessarily on the win rates itself. There's actually one that's 100% win rate in 20 games. But just kind of view it in terms of these archetypes are playable and can definitely win you games as we kind of look. So I will paste all these deck lists in the video description. We're getting in the data from UntappedGG, what you see on the screen. If you want to track your games, your deck collections, having game overlays, use a bunch of the stats. Link is in the video description for Untapped as well. So let's dive into it, folks. We are going to be looking from August 27th through September 5th. 17,000 games played. Highest win rate deck. We have 100%er. It's only 20 games, but someone is killing it with 5-color Transmogrify. Really Rakdos Transmog. This is a deck that was played a bit before kind of the format devolved into Sorin and Friends. What this deck is leveraging is Transmogrify, which takes basically you exile a creature you control, flip cards on top of your library until you reveal a creature put into play. Well, the sneaky thing with this deck, there's no other creatures in the deck other than Atraxa. So you make tokens with like Fable, Obnixilus, Reckoner Bankbuster, Case of the Stash Skeleton, Fountain Port's a new addition into the deck. We've seen Myrex. You can do a Mutavault, so you always kind of find your Atraxa. You can win with Obnixilus, you can win with Fables, kind of go from there as well. Otherwise, it's kind of just like a Rakdos Control-y deck. Hand Hate between Duress and Thoughtseize, Torch the Tower, I think is a really well-positioned card right now. There's a Rakdos Aggro deck, kind of like the mono-red standard deck with Heartfire Hero. The Exile is super relevant against Phoenix. I think this card is very well positioned right now. Bitter Triumphs, there's a whole bunch of removal options with the deck, and then you win through Atraxa or kind of these utility pieces. Jangantha Companion. More Hand Hate, Rending Volley for blue, and you white things, Dampening Sphere for Nykthos, go blank for Graveyard Hate, reasonable against kind of the mid-rangey control decks. Itazuku consumes all good against like Cat Oven, Low to the Ground aggro, stuff like that. Fulgin's Command, just flexible card. Extinction Event, very good against mono green Devotion. Notably, everything is odd in that deck. You can kind of hit him that way there. Against some of the more aggressive decks, you can kind of bring that in, and then Slaughter Games for any sort of combo decks. Moving on, we go to Mono Black Waste Not, 87% over 24 games. I think this deck's aggressively mediocre. If you don't have the Waste Not on curve, it tends to be a little awkward. You can grind them out, but it's not necessarily given. What's interesting is this one's playing no copies of Bandit's Talent. I would imagine that a copy or two, just giving you more copies of the Waste Not effect, could be super reasonable in this deck. You have Aquazots on the top end, Shieldred, some Lilianas mixed in, Bankbuster, and then just like a whole bunch of removal and discard for the deck. You're using a bunch of utility lands, Gyre Reach Sanitarium, the notable card for the deck where you're able to force draw discard. So even if they're hellbent, they still draw and then discard, so it triggers the Waste Not. Field of Ruins, Castles, Sunken Citadel reduces activation costs, Demolition Field, another effect, Takanuma, and Hive of the Eye Tyrant all mixed in. Your sideboard, you got cut downs, just various removal, Graveyard Hate options, combo hate, aggressive decks, mono green, mid-range decks, control decks, Hostile Investigator. Definitely could see maybe like 1 to 2 copies in the main. Just the discard effect is reasonable to provide you some card advantage. And then Invoke Despair is a way to deal with troublesome enchantments at times, but just lets you effectively 3-for-1 your opponent with that card. Then go to Abzan Greasefang. So this deck here, 76% over 25 games. There's going to be a new card in Duskborn. Basically, it would be like Assassin's Trophy with Delirium kind of effect, but you don't give them the land, which seems much better inclusion in the deck. But the deck is looking to kind of self-mill yourself over. Greasefang reanimates any of these vehicles, crews it, and gives it haste. Most notably Parhelion, which can allow you to attack for 13 damage in the air and leave you behind 2/4/4 Vigilant Angels. Liliana in here, kind of way to attack. So this one's a little bit more mid-rangey control, where Fiend's Informant helps you dig. You have Cash Grab that helps you mill over and find you cards. Grizzly Salvage, Witherbloom Command, and then we have Lively Dirge as a kind of all-in tutor and reanimate your Greasefang. Traverse the Uvenwald is a way to kind of tutor up stuff, as well as Vasil Nescency to kind of help build that Delirium. The mana base is a little interesting on this one here. I would say you don't want Indantha Triomes. Play the fast lines instead. Your sideboard, hand hates, various removal options. Pick your poisons, good against a variety of different kind of hate pieces for the deck from Graveyard Hate. You have Dampening Spheres for Nykthos, Pest Control for like low to the ground aggro decks, stuff like that. Graveyard Hate for your opponent's decks. Night of Autumn can be brought in as a flexible card to blow up various enchantments, artifacts that would have hate pieces. Lily and Shieldred just kind of shifts you a little bit out of the graveyard plan. You can kind of just play like an Abzan mid-rangey control deck. Moving on, we go to Selesnya Devotion, which is basically just mono green Devotion splash Elish Norn in here. So we have Elish Norn, Mother Machines, doubles your ETB triggers. What you want to do ideally, have Leyline in your opening hand if you're a boss. Get into play for free, have Nykthos in your opener, generate a whole bunch of mana, tap on tap with Kiora, chain through your deck with things like Storm the Festival, Outcaster, Trailblazer, and Kiora both draw you cards, play a whole bunch of cards, generate a whole bunch of mana, Uvenwald Oddity gets cast or put into play, and then you activate its ability, give everything you control, have haste. Sideboard with this deck, you have Pick Your Poison, just flexible kind of removal options, Tail Swipe for a fight effect, Stonebrain for combo, and Licensor for Graveyard Hate, Options Bailout for heavy discard decks, Gargaroth for kind of the more aggressive decks, you can Stonewall your opponent, Elish Norn for anything with ETBs, Silverback Elder is another way to kind of deal with aggressive decks, lets you blow up artifacts, enchantments, the life gain can be reasonable as well. Leveler to blow up, just flexible, blow up anything, and then Emrakul for the mid-range games, you just kind of go over the top. Then go to Golgari Roots combo, 76%. So this deck here, built around the namesake card Insidious Roots. Whenever a card leaves your graveyard, you get to create a 1/1 plant, and you put a counter on each other plant, and then your creature tokens have add 1 mana of any color. Pair that with Tyvar, and your creatures can tap for mana right away. This allows you to kind of churn through your deck fairly quickly. So you can do things like activate Priest the same turn, Cauldron's a way to get things out of your graveyard. You can get Rebel Bolt Maverick. They come out of your graveyard, Deathrite Shaman away, eat out your graveyard, Souls of the Lost gets bigger based on the number of permanents in your graveyard, so it's kind of just chaining through your deck at that point, making a really wide board. Artifact Enchantment hates, Brave Enfeeblement for killing white things, Thoughtseize for hand hate, Back to Nature destroy all enchantments, Dampening Sphere for Nykthos, Liliana as a grindy effect. Then go to Izzet Phoenix, probably the most consistent, best deck I would say overall, just over a wider spread. Harder deck to play, so it kind of inherently has a little bit lower of a win rate. This one's a little interesting. We see a copy of Thing in the Ice in the main. A lot of them are on Prof's Eidetic Memory as a way to just kind of give you non-graveyard synergy. The big kind of card of the deck is Treasure Cruise, 1 mana, draw 3. Is a very, very good rate. This one we see a couple Fiery Impulse, a couple Torch the Towers, all the draw package. What you want to do, put Phoenix into your yard through Ledger Shredder, Picklock Prankster, or Surveil, and then get them back. You could also Lightning Axe, put in the graveyard. Very, very consistent deck overall. Sideboard, green and red hate, Disdainful Stroke for big mana, Thing, and Young Pyro, and Crackling Drake, and Saheeli. A lot of different options. They bring in a lot of graveyard hate. You can kind of shift to an Izzet tempo deck. Prismari Command, flexible card to deal with some of the artifact hate. Sweepers in Brotherhood's End and Anger. Ashiok for the mirrors or anything that's tutoring. And then Disputes for counter spells. Go to Mono White Humans at 75%. So we have a card that still could be somewhat reasonable. We're going to see some collected company decks. We're going to see Transmogrify. We see Phoenix. The non-token creature would enter the battlefield. If it wasn't cast, exile it instead. All ways to kind of get rid of those effects. Playing a human tribal deck. So Thalia's Lieutenant puts counters on things and then gets bigger itself with subsequent humans. The Vanguard gives your humans ward plus power increase. A bunch of strong 1-drops here. Protection, blow up artifacts, enchantments, card advantage, removal with Brutal Cathar, Adeline as a way to just kind of go wide. Each attack triggers a lieutenant, and then Brave the Elements can be protection effect, or if you're like, say, against mono green, you could give it pro green and just attack in for lethal. A lot of good utility lands in the deck. Mutavaults, Caverns for unblockable, or for uncounterable, Castles for creatures, and then Iganjos as removal options. Wedding Announcement comes in against the mid-rangey control decks. Rest in peace for Graveyard Hate. Invasion of Gobukan is the white kind of Thoughtseize style effect. Get Lost as just kind of flexible removal, and then Portable Hole as early aggressive removal. We go next to Golgari Food. So there's two kind of versions of the Golgari, or the food decks. We have a Golgari variant and a Jund variant. The core of the deck is a combo deck. So Yurgra makes all your creatures into food tokens. So if you have a Cauldron Familiar in the play and a Cauldron Familiar in your graveyard, you can basically sack them to each other and then bring them back infinite times and drain your opponent out that way there. So you have your Cat Oven package. The Golgari version's playing the Gilded Goose, Trail of Crumbs for card advantage. You also have the card Scavenger's Talent, one of the new cards. So whenever a creature you control dies, you get once per turn, get to create a food token. For level 2, whenever you sacrifice permanent, target player mills 2 cards. This allows you to self-mill to find your cats. And then level 3, at the beginning of your end step, you may sack 3 other permanents. If you do, return target creature from the graveyard to the battlefield with finality counter. This is a way that you can get back your Yurga if you mill it over. Deadly Dispute for card advantage, Fatal Pushes, Meathook Massacre is another way to kind of drain your opponent value-wise and be a sweeper. And then we also have Bristlebud Farmer, 4 mana, 5/5 trample. Enters the battlefield, create 2 foods. And then whenever it attacks, you may sack food. If you do mill 3 cards, you may put a permanent card from among them into your hands. This just helps you dig further into the combo. Sideboard, just Haywire Mites, Artifact Shaman Hate, Picker Poisons, a lot of the cards we mentioned. Feed the Cycle, just a cheap way to have Planeswalker creature removal. You can forge by exiling cards from your graveyard. You make a lot of food tokens in this deck, which can also be used for forge. Graveyard Hate, Kalitas for kind of more of the aggressive decks. Anything with like death triggers, you can kind of void it. Beseiju to blow up artifacts, enchantments. So this one's not sequentially the next highest win rate, but I wanted to show them side by side. There's the Jund version of the deck. So this is kind of the traditional red-black sacrifice deck that's just shoving in Yurgas. So you have Mayhem Devils, Fables, kind of that package. 3 Scavenger's Talents in here, the Claim, Unlucky Witness. Pretty much a stock list, just some green sources for Yurga to have the backdoor combo in it. Thoughtseizes, Dampening Spears, like we mentioned, kind of the same core. And against control decks, you have Omnixis kind of mixed into there. So I'm not going to go too deep. Same concept, just Mayhem Devil gets a bunch of pings. Fable helps you dig into the combo a little bit more consistently. Moving on, we go to Azorius Control, 68%. So we're seeing a lot of these creature decks, so temporary lockdowns in the main. Narset with this cool art gets much better against like Phoenix decks, things that are drawing cards. A lot of cheap removal between marches, get lost, the lockdown itself. You have sweepers on the top ends, Supreme Verdict, Sunfall, and Farewell. Counters, 3 steps ahead, sensors, change equation. You're pretty much just like, we kill things. Eventually, we'll drop a Wandering Emperor to Fairy or beat you down with a Sunfall token, or like Fountain Port, Restless Anchorage. Any of these utility lines kind of wins the game that way there. This one's also playing Gyreach Sanitarium Narset Lock. If your opponent's already drawn a card for a turn, you can force them to draw a discard, so they just discard a card from hand, which is kind of cool. Kahira Companion, because you don't have any creatures. That's your win con, folks. A 3/2. Green and red things, Divine Smite, exiles target creature or planeswalker. If it's black, Rest in Peace, Graveyard Hate, Kasuli Flanker, Graveyard Hate, Life Gain. Just a flexible kind of all-around card. Counters, Beza for the more aggressive decks, Shark Typhoon for the control mirrors, kind of mid-range mirrors, just give you another kind of way to close out the game. We go down to Selesnya Company. It's kind of Death and Taxes style deck. So Collected Company. So you're going to see just the most Collected Company curves ever. 8 1-drop accelerants into a bunch of 3-drops. Peacekeeper eats away at their hands, taxes them. Archon of Myria, 1 card per turn. Haven Interrupter, basically a counterspell through plot, so kind of screws them up. Elite Spellbinder, tax them. Skyclave, removal. We have Trostani, hasn't seen any play really. Comes in, 3 mana, 4/4. Target creature gets Death Touch, target creature gets Vigilance, target creature gains double strike. So nice mana sink for the deck. Werewolf Pack Leader, kind of way to draw some cards. Thalia for tax. Kellen can be used for map tokens or be another card advantage engine. 1 Amiria's Call in the mana base. 1 Restless Prairie as utility line. Removal. Handhake. Carl Harpooner can you use to fight the various birds within the Phoenix deck. It's also, depending on where you're at, can technically kill an Atraxa. Graveyard Hate. Tax effect. Kayla's Reconstruction for kind of the grindier matchups. Knockout Blow for red-based decks. Werewolf Bodyguard is some more removal, and Sarah Paragon for the grindier matchups. Bring it in, kind of rebuy your stuff from the graveyard. And then lastly, someone brought their standard deck to Pioneer and has been killing it in the MTGO leagues. This deck's been picking up a lot of popularity, multiple 5-0s. In one of the league or the challenges, it finished 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So this is kind of the standard to Pioneer version of Mono Red Fling. Umano's in here, Monastery Swift Spears, Heartfire Heroes, Emberheart Challengers, Slick Shots, 3 Calicel Sword, Monstrous Rage, Titan Strength, 1 mana. Target creature gets +3/1 until end of turn, scry 1. Don't believe Titan Strength is in Explorer. I'll have to double check that one there. But you use Infuriate instead of this one here if you don't have that. Claim to Fame gets you back stuff, also can be used for haste. Ancestral Anger, card draw, trample. Hammer Hand gives something haste and prevents a creature from blocking. You have a Rockface Village in here, just better mana base. Sideboard, Thoughtseize for hand hate. Ferocidon's in here for life gain. Reckless Rage as removal. Fatal Pushes removal, and Licensors. Honestly, I would even consider potentially playing Torchlight Tower instead of Reckless Rage. It allows you to be a little bit more consistent turn 1. It doesn't play you into kind of 2-for-1 position, and the Exile is relevant in a lot of these smaller base matchups. Something just to consider there. That's it for the week. Hope you enjoy. Let me know what you've been playing, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.